Every gladiator's journey through the Colosseum began long before they reached the sand, rooted in a life where their very existence was a matter of state-sanctioned ownership. You drew your first breath on the packed dirt floor of a slave quarter. As the child of an enslaved mother, you were born as the legal property of a Roman senator, possessing the same rights and status as a piece of farm equipment. By age 5, you were hauling water and dragging straw across a vast agricultural estate. Your only compensation for this labor was a meager ration of bitter fava beans and coarse barley, the cheapest fuel available to keep a laborer standing. This decade of continuous, back-breaking work acted as a primitive gym. Years of hauling heavy weights through the fields forged dense muscle and iron-like endurance in the children who managed to survive the environment. The physical power associated with the arena's greatest champions was built in these fields, through the crushing, repetitive mechanics of agricultural labor. When you turned 13, a visiting Lanista, a gladiator recruiter, watched you move a load of grain that 2 grown men struggled to carry. He saw a high-yield investment. Within minutes, you were purchased, chained, and marched towards a new life. Entering the Ludus, or Gladiator Academy, brought a sudden change in conditions. To protect his investment, the Lanista provided high-calorie meals, a clean cell, and regular access to specialized doctors. Training was an exhausting, monotonous grind. Under the eye of a veteran instructor, you spent your days standing before a wooden post, repeating the same legal strikes thousands of times to build muscle memory. You practiced with wooden swords that were twice the weight of standard steel to develop explosive striking power. Every drill was designed to teach you exactly where to hit to prolong a fight or end it with a single crowd-pleasing strike. This sudden access to premium food and medical care was a strictly commercial decision. You were a commodified asset, and the Lanista required you to be in peak condition to maximize your rental value in the arena. As you stepped onto the sand of the Colosseum for your debut, you had no agency over your gear or combat style. Weapons and armor were assigned by the organizers based on their specific entertainment strategies for the day. Your height and speed led the Lanista to designate you as a Retiarius. You entered the match armed only with a trident and a weighted net, wearing a single bronze guard on your left shoulder to ensure you remained light and fast. Your opponent was a Murmillo, a heavily armored fighter encased in bronze. He carried a massive rectangular shield and a short gladius, designed to march forward and crush his enemies with sheer weight and force. When the Murmillo lunged, you used your speed to dodge. With a practiced flick, you threw your weighted net, tangling his shield arm and forcing him to the ground. You stood over him, the tips of your trident resting against his throat. The crowd screamed for a lethal blow, but the Lanista signaled for you to lower your weapon. He spared the man, despite the bloodlust in the stands. Why? Because training, feeding, and housing a gladiator was incredibly expensive. If a fighter was killed, the event sponsor had to pay the Lanista up to 100 times the original rental cost to replace the lost property. Sparing a defeated opponent on the sand kept the sponsor's books in the black. Mercy in the arena was a practical risk management strategy designed to protect a valuable investment. By age 20, your fame made you a potential political threat. To test your resolve and satisfy the crowds, the organizer scheduled a Venationes, a beast hunt, pitting you against the apex predators of the empire. Exotic animals were captured at the edges of the Roman world and kept in dark, cramped underground cages. Starved for weeks, these creatures were released into the arena in a state of desperate aggression. Facing a charging lion, you relied on the reflexes forged in the Ludus. You waited until the animal leaped before dodging laterally, delivering a single fatal strike to its ribs as it passed. In response to the crowd's reaction, the emperor granted you the symbolic wooden sword, the Ludus, along with the wax tablet in your official manumission. You kept that wax tablet in a leather pouch around your neck. Without that physical proof of your deed, the Roman legal system would still view you as a runaway slave, subject to immediate recapture. With your arena winnings, you purchased a small home on the outskirts of Rome. You earned a living by teaching swordplay to wealthy young nobles who wanted to learn the art of self-defense. One afternoon at the slave market, you saw a young woman bearing the same scars of abuse your mother had suffered. You purchased her, not to own her, but to immediately grant her legal freedom through the courts. She chose to stay with you, and soon your courtyard was filled with the sounds of your children playing. You had managed to build a quiet, stable life for your family. This peaceful existence was built on the fragile hope that a person once classified as property could ever be truly secure within the Roman system. That security vanished when a slave on a neighboring estate reached his breaking point and murdered his master. You had no connection to the crime, but the Roman legal code made no distinction. Under the law known as the Senatus Consultum Selenium, the murder of a master triggered the execution of every slave in the household, along with their relatives and former associates, to deter future revolts. Because your wife had once been owned by that neighboring senator, the state classified her and your children as accomplices. You returned home to find your family had been slaughtered by the very guards meant to uphold the law. You discarded your pouch of freedom, took up your arena steel, and hunted down the patrician who had signed the execution orders. You bypassed his guards and delivered your final strike in his own villa. As the Roman military surrounded the estate, you chose the final term of your existence. Rather than return to the chains you were born in, you turned your blade inward and fell on your own sword. Mastering the arena could buy a gladiator his freedom, but it could never protect him from a legal code that prioritized collective terror over individual life. For those lost to the system, the only true escape was the end of the fight.